Maybe some of you feel a little bit like the chap on screen behind me at the moment. It's that time of year, isn't it? Your teachers are banging on constantly about exams. Let's get the mocks done. Let's focus on the summer. Let's keep the effort up. Let's keep going. Come on. And we can feel very, very stressed. Stress, of course, can be caused by a number of things. We can be under pressure. We can have lots of deadlines. It might be that we're stressed because we're facing some big changes in our life. We may well be worried about something in school, out of school. We might be stressed because we feel we don't have much control over a situation. We might be stressed because we have responsibilities in our life that we're finding a little bit overwhelming, and we're not sure we're equipped to cope with them. And sometimes we might be stressed because we don't actually have enough challenge, or enough activity, or enough things to do in our lives. The American Psychological Association did a survey recently, and they asked people what they felt were the top 5 causes of stress. Now, these are questions that were asked of adults, not of teenagers. And I wonder what you think might be up there in terms of the top 5 causes of stress for adults in America, and I guess it would be similar to this country. Anyone like to hazard a guess? What's going to appear in the top 5 causes of stress for adults? Anyone like to hazard a guess? George? Money. Okay, good suggestion. Anybody else like to suggest something that might stress adults out? Yeah. Jack? Children. I make no comment, Jack. There are all sorts of things that may cause stress. George's suggestion, money, was top of the list. Jack's suggestion, children, family relationships, was 4th on the list. I don't think any of us will be surprised to see the things that appear on the list there. And if you've been watching or listening to the news over the weekend, you'll be aware that there are some 20,000 people who've woken up this morning in this country not sure if they're going to have a job, because the company they work for, Carillion, has gone into liquidation. In other words, it can no longer function. That huge business is now being run by a set of accountants who will sell off parts of the business in order to pay the debts. And those people do not know if they are going to have future employment. So they've woken up this morning in a whole world of stress. For many of you, that is a familiar graph. I suspect if you do GCSE PE, you'll have seen this before. I suspect if you do A-level psychology, you will have seen this before. I suspect if you do BTEC sport or outdoor ed, you will have seen this before. Stress isn't necessarily a bad thing for us. We actually function better with the right amount of stress. The problem occurs on that graph where we hit the point labelled fatigue. Because if the stress continues beyond that point, our performance, which is what's measured on the y-axis of that graph, starts to dip. So no stress isn't actually very helpful for us. We don't perform well. We need a little bit of stress, the right amount of stress. But too much stress will cause our performance to drop. And if you look at the right-hand end of the graph, it can ultimately lead to exhaustion, to ill health, and even to physical and mental breakdown. So stress isn't necessarily the enemy. Too much stress is a problem, and knowing how to cope with it is important. How do you know you're stressed? You may or you may not be able to read all of that, but there might be some words up there that resonate with some of you at the moment. Many of you are in the throes of some quite important exams. These are exams which will lead your teachers to make predictions about your likely performance in the summer. And for many of those predictions will possibly open doors to universities for you. So yes, they are important. You do need to do well if you are to go where you want to go. But maybe some of the words up on the screen there are resonating with some of you. Perhaps sometimes you find yourself more irritable than you normally are. Perhaps you feel a little bit more aggressive than you normally do. Perhaps you find yourself snapping at people. Perhaps you find yourself biting your nails, which is not something you normally do. There may be all sorts of things that you are doing which might indicate that you are stressed. So the critical thing, of course, is what can you do if you are feeling like that? How can you better cope with the stresses you face? For all of us, there are going to be stressful times and stressful situations in our lives. We can't go through our life not experiencing stress. That isn't possible, and neither, in fact, would it be very productive. But what can we do if we find ourselves feeling stressed? Here are a few simple and I hope practical suggestions. They may mean a little bit more to the older ones in front of me today than they do to the younger ones, but they apply equally to all of us. The first thing is understand yourself. So learn to understand when you are stressed. What are the symptoms for you? Is it that you become more irritable? Is it that you withdraw into yourself? Many people do that when they are stressed. Other people might just become a little bit louder and a little bit more aggressive when they're stressed, because that is how they cope. But if you know what is happening to you, and you can understand that this is because you are feeling stressed, then you're on the right path to be able to do something to help you. Please don't do this. Don't compare yourself with others around you. You all know them, don't you? Those really annoying people who will get ready for an exam, and as you're waiting outside to go into the exam, they'll be the ones pacing up and down outside going, "I've only read Macbeth 17 times, I'm a bit worried, I don't know it very well." We all know those sorts of people. They drive you insane. Don't compare yourself to others. Think about yourself. Think about the preparation that you have done, and think about the outcome that you desire. Very, very simple stuff. Please eat well. There is absolutely no excuse for any of you to eat poorly at lunchtime in this school. The food here is fantastic. Those of you who are boarders, you have access to 3 fantastic meals a day. There is no excuse for you not to eat well. It worries me when I hear people say, "Oh, I haven't got time for breakfast. Too busy." It's a little bit like starting up your car engine in the morning, knowing full well that there's no petrol in the tank, but you're going to go and start the car anyway. How can you possibly function well if you're not fueling your body for all the things that lie ahead? And I do sometimes wonder, those of you who are sitting in front of me this morning, bleary-eyed, barely managing to stay awake, have you eaten this morning? Because if you haven't, then perhaps it's no surprise that you are finding it difficult to function. This is basic biology. Fuel your body. Eat well. With that, sleep well. As I've got older, one of the things I've discovered is that I actually sleep less. It's quite common. People discover this as they get older. And now I'm in my 30s. I find myself able to sleep for shorter periods of time but still function. You guys should be sleeping, on average, 8 hours every night. 8 hours. Just reflect on this past weekend. Did you sleep for 8 hours? Those of you who are addicted to your electronic devices and lie in bed at night with the blue light shining into your eyes, stimulating your brain, telling your brain it's still wakey time, let's be active. You're up until midnight, 1, 2 in the morning, gaming, contacting friends, whatever you're doing. You're not sleeping well. That's not going to help you cope when you are stressed. And it is, of course, one of the main reasons why we ask boarders here at Kingsley to hand those electronic devices in when they go to bed. There is oodles of scientific evidence to assert that if you are using electronic devices late at night, you are not going to sleep well. That's why we do what we do with boarders. Now, I can't control what day pupils are doing at home, what your parents let you do. But if you're up until 2 or 3 in the morning regularly on your electronic devices, I'm not surprised that you struggle to stay awake. I'm not surprised that you struggle to focus in school. And I'm not surprised that you might be more stressed than some of your peers. So turn them off. Give them to your parents. You don't need them when you're trying to sleep. Exercise. You do lots of exercise here at school. It's really, really good for you. Those of you who've studied biology, GCSE sport, etc., you understand the benefits of exercise. Many of you spend many hours a week doing physical exercise. Some of you don't. Some of you barely move. It could be a vigorous walk, it could be a run, it could be just getting stuck into your PE lessons. But if you exercise, it will help you cope with stress. It also releases chemicals into your brain that tell your brain and your body that this is a good thing to be doing. These all help. These don't. Smoking and drinking are things that people turn to sometimes when they feel stressed. OMG, I'm so stressed, I must have a smoke. Or they turn to drink. Neither of these things will help you cope with stress. Neither of these things is a sensible solution to feeling stressed. So avoid them as much as you can. Some of you might get yourselves into a little bit of a panicked state sometimes. I'm one of these people who's got an Apple Watch. And my Apple Watch is very kind to me because every so often it reminds me that I need to breathe. Which obviously I might forget, it didn't tell me. But it does about once an hour buzz on my wrist and say breathe. What it means, of course, is stop for 90 seconds. Just focus on your breathing. And slowly breathe in. And slowly breathe out. It only lasts for about 90 seconds. When I do stop, follow the watch's advice and do that, it always helps. It's just a pause. Gives me the time to regroup myself. Final piece of advice, especially those of you in the middle of exams right now, going off to do them now, the exam post-mortem, just walk away. Walk away. You don't need to hear the people in your class who are going to discuss that maths problem for the next 20 minutes. It'll just make you cross. Walk away and leave them to it. An exam post-mortem has never ever helped anybody. If you have a genuine concern about something that you may have done wrong in an exam, leave it a couple of days and go and speak to your teacher. Don't be the ones who are sitting around outside the exam hall pondering whether or not the answer to question 6 was 42 or 47. Don't do that. It's not going to help you. Because if you got it wrong, it's going to make you feel even worse than you currently do. So stress. It's there, isn't it? We're all facing it. We all deal with it on a daily basis. Some of us seem to be able to deal with it better than others. Perhaps that's because some of us do these things better. Perhaps those of us who try to eat well, always get lots of sleep, try to exercise, don't drink to excess, don't smoke, perhaps we're better equipped to cope with stress than others. I can't take stress away from you because it's going to be part of your life for as long as you live. Because the stresses of school will be replaced by the stresses of university, and then the stresses of work, and then the stresses of relationships and families. And pretty soon, you'll be the people in the survey worried about money, and work, and jobs, and the economy, and the environment. That'll be you. I can't take the stresses away. But what we can do is we can help you appreciate and understand what all of us can do to de-stress. Now, I won't go over the full list again, but you heard the chaplain stand up last week and invite you to go along to the chapel in lunchtimes. There's an awful lot going on now in the chapel, and many of those activities are specifically designed to help you de-stress. Just to take the stress away from your busy lives. So if you're feeling that at the moment, go along. Go and see what's happening in the chapel at lunchtimes. Go and join Miss Timms. And just take a few minutes, step off the conveyor belt, and just take a little bit of a pause. I hope this week is a productive week for all of you. It is a very busy week. Many of you have a lot of exams this week. Please try and do at least the bare minimum of those. Please try this week to eat well. Please try this week to sleep well. And get off those electronic devices. Some of you will have picked up in the news over Christmas that France, the whole country, is about to ban all mobile phones from all schools because of the negative impact that those electronic devices are having on young people. I'm not at the moment proposing that Kingsley follows suit, but I do worry about how utterly obsessed with electronic devices some of you are becoming. And I don't think it's helping you. So we will continue to talk about that. Perhaps it's something that you might mention in the next school council. George and Eleanor will be talking to you briefly about that on Wednesday. I'm going to ask you just to do something very simple. Could you just put your feet flat on the floor, please, if you're able to? And just sit nice and still. And as we prepare for what is going to be a very busy week, can I ask you just to take a moment to sit quietly and to think. Think about what lies ahead. Think about the things that might be stressing you. And think about the things you might be able to do to reduce that stress. Let's take a moment to be quiet. Years 11, 12 and 13, please stay where you are. Years 7, if you could lead out from the bottom, please.